there. We thank you all for your commitment to making Manhattan a more just and equitable space and your presence with us this evening at the People's Forum. So I'd like to start out tonight with a little story, as a large part of what you will hear over the next 2 hours will be personal stories from members of our community. To capture the significance of the People's Forum, I am reminded of a moment that took place earlier this fall when I visited the state capitol in Topeka with my 5th grader, Judah. He was working on a report for school about a historical figure, and we promptly decided that seeing Tragic Prelude, the incredible mural by John Stewart Curry depicting John Brown during the Bleeding Kansas unrest, would be a worthy inspiration. As we walked up to the staircase to the rotunda, my steady and serious child became transfixed by the ornate fixtures and gilded banisters that surrounded him, far fancier than any building he had ever seen, and certainly larger than life to his 10-year-old brain. I watched him as his eyes followed upward to take in the dome that had begun to reveal himself as we ascended. Breaking several moments of silence, my sweet child turned to me and remarked, "Isn't it so nice that we're allowed to be in here?" Puzzled but curious, I couldn't help but ask him what he meant by this. He repeated, "I guess I just can't believe they let regular people come inside the Capitol." "But this is our house, Jude," I responded as we peeked our heads around into the East Wing to see the towering figure of John Brown standing, arms outstretched before us. In that 4-sentence exchange, I am reminded how the vast majority of us engage with politics, electoral or otherwise. Just like Judah, we believe it stands outside our ordinary experience. It is something that we may read about or listen to, but we don't touch it. It is beyond interaction. And honestly, this is less by accident than by design that our government feels this way. The current scope of politics isn't intended to capture the voices, concerns, and priorities of regular constituents and our communities apart from, say, our individual votes on election day. But the People's Forum is different. Residents and voters of Manhattan, tonight we're part of something that is quite unique. And yes, we are all participants in the People's Forum. Unlike a traditional city commission candidate event or an electoral debate that we see on TV, the interests and issues being discussed here tonight will be framed and curated by voters. Months ago, participating organizations and concerned Manhattan residents formed the People's Forum Coalition with the expressed intent of building collective momentum around the concerns of local citizens. As an informal body, it was our aim to identify specific policies that future city commissioners would shape if they were to be elected to office. From here, we sought to elevate and organize around these issues through tonight's forum and beyond. As you can see in your program, the structure of the People's Forum is simple. You will hear from 7 speakers representing local grassroots community groups. Each speaker will tell their personal story and present a related policy ask to the candidates. This will come in the form of a question that represents the central issue facing their organization and its broader member base. In the spirit of transparency and democracy, City Commission candidates have had access to these policy asks ahead of the forum, time to ask questions, define their positions and views, and craft their responses. After the organizational speakers, you will hear from the 7 City Commission candidates with us this evening. As each candidate answers with their position, you as voters will have an opportunity to clarify and decide. Do individual candidates' responses and commitments align with your voting values? You have been presented with a scorecard as well as green and red strips of paper. While limited in our 2 hours together this evening, the People's Forum Planning Committee wanted to offer audience members opportunities to engage. You can use the scorecard to track your satisfaction with candidate replies, and we also invite you to use the red and green community candidate indicator cards at your seat to provide City Commission candidates with immediate community and audience feedback. How does that work? Well, you'll join us in showing our collective strength by raising a red card when you do not support a candidate statement or response, and by raising the green card when you do support a candidate statement or response. So now that we have covered the structure of the forum, it is my pleasure to introduce some of the wonderful people who will help facilitate tonight's event. First, as I mentioned, I'd like to introduce my co-moderator, Jonalyn Johnstone, who will be handling the candidate microphone this evening. Our community speaker microphone will have Dakota Santiago from Renters Together. Jerry Sexto from Flint Hills Human Rights Project will be our official timekeeper. And sitting next to Jerry is Breasia Harris. Breasia is an American Ethnic Studies major at K-State and one of our incredible MAPJ community organizing interns this semester. Her role this evening will be to keep track of candidate responses on our official People's Forum scorecard. Responses will be recorded as in support of policy ask, against policy ask, and did not answer the question. To conclude my opening remarks, I would like to introduce the 7 City Commission candidates present for the People's Forum. Moving from left to right, we have Erin Estabrook, Maureen Sheehan, Caleb James, Linda Morris, Vincent Tracy, Sarah Siders, and Mary Renee Scher. Not present this evening is Mark Hadisol. Prior to sharing candidate responses, Mark will have an opportunity to register his position on each organization's policy ask. And with that, let's begin with our first community speaker from Bike Walk MHK, Mandy McKinley.
Good evening. My name is Mandy McKinley, and I am here today representing Bike Walk MHK. I am one of the approximately 10% of the community that commutes by bike or foot, and have been a resident of Manhattan for 21 years. I have been utilizing sidewalks and trails in and around Manhattan, both as a runner and a bicycle commuter. I am one voice, one face of a growing number of individuals and families who choose to bike and walk for health, economic, and environmental reasons. I appreciate the progress that has been made in our community to make cyclists and pedestrians safer. Increased lighted pathways, protected sidewalks and crosswalks in school zones, and bike lanes are a great start. However, further development and funding of a comprehensive bike ped systems plan are necessary to make our beloved community safe for bikes and pedestrians. There have been many occasions when I have personally experienced unsafe biking and walking situations due to the lack of safe and accessible bike infrastructure in our community. There is one experience that stands out to me in particular. I'm a mother of 3 wonderful children. Last spring, I was biking from campus to the elementary school for a special afternoon. Our then 6th grader was participating in the school spelling bee. Our youngest, a kindergartner, was being recognized at the Character of the Month assembly. Our middle child would be excited to see us and to celebrate with her brothers. At the time, I was riding my usual commute along Anderson Avenue on the sidewalk because of the heavy traffic. This particular day seemed like any other, heart pounding both from the uphill workout and the increased vigilance and fear that come with riding so close to traffic. While crossing on a protected walk signal at an intersection, I was nearly hit by a car. While the terror of that moment has clouded the details of that near accident, the thoughts that immediately followed are seared into my mind. As I continued biking up the hill, my breathing was harder than normal and tears stung my eyes. How could I continue to instill a love of biking in my kids if I was too scared to continue to ride? What if I were injured, never to bike or run again? What if instead of enjoying an ice cream with my kids to celebrate their accomplishments, I was lying in a hospital bed, or worse? Funding for safe and accessible biking and walking systems in Manhattan can reduce experiences like mine. I am one of the 50 Bike Walk MHK registered voters that support full funding for the Bike Ped Systems Plan. Bike Walk MHK registers voters weekly through group rides and monthly critical mass gatherings. We anticipate registering additional voters by October 15th. The City Commission will vote to approve a new bike ped systems plan in December 2019. There is currently no mechanism or formula to fund the implementation of the new plan. Will you work to create a funding mechanism for the implementation of the new bike ped systems plan?
Our first response comes from Aaron.
I love going first. Thank you for sharing your story and your personal experience. As your commissioner, I would advocate and support a consistent percentage of the city's annual transportation budget being directed to the bike ped projects from the bike ped systems plan. Roughly 11% of Manhattan residents use biking and walking as their means of transportation. The current transportation budget dedicates next to nothing to this 11% of residents. It would be reasonable to dedicate at least 2% for bike ped projects going forward and develop metrics to focus on safety and health to measure the outcomes of those projects for funding to continue to increase incrementally over time. I believe that 2% of the transportation budget would be an ideal place for participatory budgeting to be implemented. Additionally, if the sales tax does pass, that there could be a source of revenue in the general fund for these concepts. I thank you for your efforts to lift up voices in our community that may otherwise have gone unheard. And I think it's groups like yours that show us how to build our neighborhoods engagement that can translate into tangible policy. Thank you.
Thank you. That sounded like a yes. Maureen Sheehan.
Thank you for sharing your story. Yes, I agree. I do not bike in this town because I don't feel safe doing so. And I think that's a real shame. So we definitely need to work to find funding. Part of the transportation budget is a good place to start. Also, maybe some of the Eco-Devo money that's set aside for transportation could be added to that. And yeah, not to just copy all of Aaron's answers, but another thought was that that would be a good place to start with the participatory budgeting, where we could ask the bikers what parts of the city need the most attention right away. I've had some people say, or one person say, we have to have a pedestrian overcross on Fort Riley Boulevard, where that bridge used to be. If we don't do that, then nothing else is going to be good enough. So there has to be balances, but yes, I definitely agree we need to work on this and get it funded.
Thank you. Caleb James.
All right, again, you're probably going to hear thank you for your story 7 times. So thank you for your story. Yes, I'm 100% for finding a funding mechanism. I think economic development funds is a place to look. If the sales tax passes, that's going to increase the general fund, and so we'd have some room there to look. Kick in a couple thousand from the commissioner's travel budget. I don't really see why they need to be going that many places. So yeah, we'll find a way.
Thank you. Linda Morse.
I don't have enough background because I don't know if your group has been to the Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committee that the city has, working through them to follow through with your request seems appropriate. And since I don't know, you may have already done it. I do know that the last recreation sales tax that we passed here in the community allocated 5% for trails and pedestrian and paths here in the community. So I think it would be fair to tap into that money that's already targeted for that purpose. Makes really good sense to me. I do know that biking it is increasing, and there's a lot more interest than 10 years ago or whatever. So I think it's time that we, I know, I saw Jared Tremblay here with the Bicycle Advisory Committee. I'd like to ask him what's been happening at their level, but I appreciate what you're saying, and it makes sense to me.
So I take it that's a yes?
Okay.
Vincent Tracy.
Good evening. Thank you for your story. And as an emergency medical technician that worked here in the city, I'm well familiar with what happens between motor vehicles and bicycles. And I was in favor of the original bicycle plan for marking the streets with the sharrows. I think we can find funding. Where exactly, I'm not sure, but if that bike ped systems plan is passed, I'm sure that we can come up with the money. It's just a matter of using some of the resources that are already available for lane marking. But some of it's also going to have to be education, not only on the motor vehicle operators' part, but on bicyclists to know when to stop. Several of the accidents were actually cyclists caused because they didn't bother paying any attention to the sign. Hey, I'll just go. That's only an occasional thing. Usually it was the motor vehicle operator not paying attention. So, yes.
Thank you. Sarah Siders.
Mandy, thank you for your story. And I appreciate it as a mom of two. That really hit home for me, what you're talking about. And I also relate to just not using my bike much in town because it doesn't feel safe. I live in Northview, so where am I gonna ride? So there's a lot of improvements that we can be making. I believe in the bike ped systems plan for many reasons. We've developed an unsustainable road infrastructure system that is difficult to maintain. We have blown up, and now we are responsible for all of these roads, and we are a car-centric culture, and we have been kind of like building our lives around that. And our young people, millennials and Gen Z, are saying, wait a minute, isn't there a better way to live? So we are moving as a culture more towards multimodal transportation, public transit, walking, biking, and how can we redesign our communities so they serve people and human connection. So I think we need to be working on that. We need to lighten the burden on the roads by focusing on supporting our bike ped systems plan so that we can improve equity and access for people of all socioeconomic backgrounds. And this will also make us a competitive community as we build quality of place. So there are many, many reasons to support the bike ped systems plan.
Thank you. Mary Renee Shirk.
Thank you for your story. Thank you. I'm going to say thank you to everybody who's going to tell a story tonight because I don't want to waste all that time saying thank you. And 90 seconds is not enough. Part of the reason I'm in this race is because I want to increase walkability and bikeability. If you talk to anybody, they say Mary wants to put benches by the bus stops. Public transportation is the way. We're moving away from car-centric. Yes. Okay. Some of that. So yes, I support every funding mechanism. I don't think we should have to find the money. I don't think we should tap the money. I don't think we should find grants for the money. We need to build pedestrian and bike into the way that we do roads and streets in this city. And we need to do it all the time. I don't like that we find special money here and there to fund something that is good for us every single day. It's about making Manhattan affordable so I don't have to own 2 cars. It's also about making sure that RCPD enforces the rules and protects and focuses on pedestrians and bikes and not be car-centric as well. It's about all of those things. My story, I'm married to a runner and I worry every time he goes out and runs. We have kids in college across the country. I got one in Chicago, one in Atlanta. My oldest used to deliver pizza in New Orleans on a bike. So we're very familiar with the bike systems in different countries. And actually Evanston, Illinois is one of the ones that I know Bike Walk uses as sort of the model for Manhattan. So it can be done, it is being done. We need to catch up with the rest of the country and focus on those things being done and make it a priority in Manhattan.
Thank you. Our next speaker is from the Flint Hills Human Rights Project, Jared McKee. He may be familiar to some of you.
Hi, so my name is Jared McKee. As John Lou said, I'm here on behalf of the Flint Hills Human Rights Project. We are an organization that advocates for LGBTQ plus equality all over the region. We have a mailing list of over 500 people. We have social media followings of over 2,000. So literally with a few clicks of a mouse, we can reach hundreds of registered voters. So I was asked to share a personal story. I want to go back in time a little bit, rewind to when I was 19 years old, 2011. I was a sophomore in college, and I had a really rough night. I remember this very vividly. I was sitting on my couch in my apartment, crying my eyes out, and it was because something that I had been working to repress for a really long time was something that I knew I needed to come to terms with, and that was my sexuality. And I wasn't crying because I was gay. I wasn't upset because I was gay. I was upset because the life that I had imagined for myself, I didn't believe was possible, right? I didn't think I was going to be able to get married. I didn't think I was going to be able to have kids. I wasn't going to be able to join the military. I didn't think I was ever going to be able to be involved in public policy. When I was little, I was a big nerd. I always wanted to be involved in the good that government could do, and I just didn't think any of those things were reality. I didn't think that because when I looked at figures of authority, none of them were like me. And none of them went out of their way to speak up and defend people like me. We fast forward 8 years later, things are a lot better, right? My life and the world are very different. I can get married, I can have kids. I'm an openly gay Manhattan City Commissioner, I didn't mean for that to happen. And in January, I got accepted to officer candidate school in the Army. So I get to do all of those things that I didn't believe were possible. And a lot of that is because of work of organizations like the Flint Hills Human Rights Project. But that being said, there's still a lot of progress to be made. After I got elected, I got a handful of really nasty letters. There's still discrimination is out there. So my question for you is, the city of Manhattan has taken a stance that discrimination against LGBT people is illegal. So my question is, do you support the current non-discrimination ordinance? And then also, will you use your platform to speak up anytime state or federal law tries to erode the progress we have made here? And I asked that question because as a 19-year-old, I didn't just need a yes vote. I needed someone who would publicly and proudly defend my right to exist. So, NDO, and we'll use your platform for good. Thank you.
Our first candidate to respond will be
I absolutely support the non-discrimination ordinance and would do everything that I can to defend it. It may surprise some people, but LGBTQ people are people. Period, end of sentence. To use my platform to speak out against other state and other initiatives that would erode rights, I would try to do that the best I can. I'm not a public speaker, so I don't know how I would do with it, but I would definitely work on that. And there was one other point I was going to make, which has escaped me. Maybe I'll catch it later.
Thank you. Kevin James.
All right. Yes, it looks good. I don't have any reason to not support it. I believe in equality. In the words of the late great Bernie Mac, I've been black a long time, and seen plenty of discrimination. Been a 10-year-old at a firework show and had people drive by in the truck saying, "N-word, go home, we don't want you here." So I relate, I understand. I wish it would have came through the city manager. I wish we wouldn't have to ensure every 2 years that you weren't going to elect a commission that would take that away from you. And so I wish it went through the channels from the city manager and solidified it, because city manager putting out ordinances haven't been reversed in a very long time. And so I wish that it wasn't passed in a way where you all had to be here and make sure that your next commission wasn't going to move backwards. So yes, I support it.
Thank you. Any more?
Thank you. I support the Kansas and the U.S. Constitution about treating people equally. And I have been a supporter of this ordinance. I ran for office 4.5 years ago, and I was a supporter of the ordinance then, or the concept at the time because we didn't have an ordinance yet. But it's the right thing to do. I'm glad that our culture has changed so that, you know, 4.5 years ago, it was a major, some of these court cases hadn't been decided yet. And now it's just, people accept it like it's always been that way. And I think that's how it ought to be. Our neighbors are entitled to the same respect as we expect. And so I have been an advocate for the Municipal Equality Index last year. We upped Manhattan's score when I was mayor to a higher level, and Jared McKee was one of the reasons, because we had an openly gay city commissioner. So, but there were other reasons. Our ordinance clicked in, and so I'm really proud of that. I think we have to just treat people equally across the board. I do have the endorsement of the Kansas Equality group for this election. Both Aaron and I have it anyway. Those are the only two I know of. But
thank you. Yes. Yes, I am. When he puts that "and" thing up, then yeah. Okay. Vincent Tracy.
First things first. I'm an employee of the federal government. I work for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and I was on our local board that was working with those members of the LGBT group that we employ to help get some of these things resolved. Yes, I support this. Not only it, but the fact that it expands on the Kansas Acts Against Discrimination, the Age Discrimination Employment Act, and the Military Personnel Act. So there's no question. Yes, I'll support it.
Thank you. Sarah Siders.
Jared, I just want to thank you for sharing that very moving story with us, and it's very moving. It feels very moving to me to hear you share that. So thank you. And I am grateful that our community has rallied and made the non-discrimination ordinance. Well, I guess it's not permanent, but it's changing the culture of our community, and I think that's important for so many reasons. The first is just treating people with humanity. I don't think it's ever okay to say to our LGBTQ friends and neighbors and family, you can't have a job because you're gay. You can't have housing because you're part of the LGBTQ population. That doesn't make sense. And we absolutely need to protect people, but also just on a larger scale in terms of, the thing I always talk about is quality of place. And we're looking to attract diversity to our community. We're looking to create a place where people who are globally talented are free to come and feel at home, and that's people of all walks of life and all backgrounds. And so we need to support diversity here in our community in every way, and I think that this is a big part of that. So I hope to be a voice for human rights in as many ways as I'm able to do. I know there's going to be some situations where there'll be complex issues that come up, but I will do my best to defend human rights. Thank you. Mary Renee.
Hey y'all, like your shirt. Okay, I came to K-State in 1995, and in 1995 I got involved what was then called the BGLS, which was Bi Gay Les Society. Back then, to attend a meeting, you have to send email to a secret email address to find out where we met, because we were so afraid we kept it secret and put paper on the windows so people couldn't see us. College students called me the night after Matthew Shepard was killed, and they were afraid because one person had written "Welcome to Wyoming" on somebody's whiteboard on their door. So I'm gonna try not to get all verklempt when I talk about this, but I've been doing this in this town since 1995. Yes, I was part of BGLS when we put the non-discrimination for LGBT people at K-State in 1999, years before the city did. I've been working on this forever. We don't ever stop working. The RCPD having a liaison is a beginning. I sat there in this room next to Kevin, who has worked for years and years, and it felt so good to accomplish this. and to feel like we've done this, and to feel like you can be out. As the mother of a lesbian, I'm telling you, I sent her away to college and I was afraid, because she's been catcalled around the park, walking around the park by someone who yelled something at her. And so I feel it every day, and I'm afraid every day. I'm happy, I'm proud, I'm excited, and I'm still afraid. And until we are not afraid, then we don't stop fighting. We just keep going.
Aaron Estabrook.
Jared, I want to thank you for your commitment to our city and your commitment to volunteer to serve our country, and I think you'll serve our country and make us proud, and I want you to know that I believe this community will be behind you through all the things that you do. We are very proud of you. Back as Linda said, Maureen, I and Linda are endorsed by Equality Kansas. That in part goes back to Jared McKee for me. Back in 2014, I was on the school board. I was a school board member with Dave Colburn as well that's here, and we had before us a non-discrimination ordinance. We were one of the first school districts in Kansas to go ahead and pass that. And Jared came and he spoke to the school board during that time. There was weeks of letters and all kinds of pressure to table this and not go forward, and we did, and we passed that, and I'm proud that we passed that, and I know that they've done more since 2014. As a commissioner, I will be an advocate. I will be an ally and stand up for equality wherever discrimination shows its head.
Our next speaker from Manhattan Alliance for Peace and Justice is Sarah Fisher.
Hello, candidates. Thank you for coming this evening, those of you that came. I have been asked to ask a question on behalf of MHK, Manhattan Alliance for Peace and Justice. Specifically, my question will be about economic development, the use of economic development funds and wages. I came to K-State to study my to go to graduate school in 1996 and participated in MHK right away. For many, many years, it was the Living Wage Coalition, organized Labor Day festivals for many times, which I believe all of you have attended, some of you multiple times, and some of you have been speakers there. So this is a natural extension of my intellectual interests. It's a natural extension of my personal and my family interests. My parents were union, my grandfather was union. So it was always something that was important to me. But very recently, the issue of wages and the use of economic development funds has become personal. And I've shared the story with a handful of you sitting at this table. But up until May of 2017, I was employed by one of our local recipients of economic development money. Specifically, they were given a forgivable loan. In May, a handful of us, not just me, please, this is a personal story, but it's not limited to me. And a handful of us saw our positions eliminated and replaced with low-wage, non-benefited, part-time employees, while the administrators actually got a raise. Now, bear in mind, these were recipients of economic development funds. So this sent me looking for a replacement for this benefit, this good job. It was a good middle-class job. Last spring, I was working 4 part-time jobs. Right now, I'm only working 3 part-time jobs, so quite a luxury. I'm still not quite able to make ends meet. But as I'm working these 3 jobs, I'm coming to know many, many people, just like me, who are educated, sometimes not quite 3 degrees, but nonetheless, they're educated people, and they're trying to piece together a living with 3 jobs. It's become a luxury in this community to be able to work just 1 job. In my house, we actually have 5 between my husband and I. So my specific question to you, it's kind of a complicated question. Will you, as if you were elected, support real economic development that creates livable jobs at a minimum of $14.25, and instead of creating wealth for a handful of people?
Our first response comes from James.
So, thank you. And my short answer, yes, my exception would be if small businesses, entrepreneurs here in Manhattan, Kansas wanted to start their business, I want to see the commission open up more economic development funds for those small businesses to start. So that would be my only exception. A lot of times with small businesses where there's only 1 or 2 employees, they have a harder time paying that $14.25. Outside of that exception, absolutely, I would support that. I would support the $14.25. I would also support having a time limit that they had to keep those jobs in place that was an extended and graduated. So it definitely shouldn't go away before the loan goes away. So if it was a forgivable loan for 5 years, they can't eliminate that position in 1 year. And then if X percentage of them would be eliminated, then we would call in that loan. So there are some ways that we can structure the loans from the Economic Development Fund to ensure that those jobs stay there and don't just count because, oh, we hired somebody, now it counts, and we can fire them a month later. But that still counts towards the jobs you said you were going to create with those economic development funds, so we need to find a way to hold them accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda Morris.
Thank you, Sarah. I remember you telling me about that last year. I just don't have a job. The city contracts with the Chamber of Commerce currently to vet the economic development applications that come in, whether that's even some local educational institutions, whatever it is. Because, and the reason is because once the company submits information to the city, it becomes public information. And they don't want their proprietary information being distributed to anybody that asks for it through a Freedom of Information Act request. So they, the city and the chamber have this arrangement with it. But the chamber has, the city and the chamber have agreed on some standards for what kinds of jobs will be created. And it was my understanding that they were requiring better paid jobs than they did at one time. You remember, if you've been here long enough, you remember when there were 2 call centers out of the airport. And in 10 years, when those companies hit their 10-year mark, they were out of here. They paid just above the minimum wage, but anyway, so that's one of the bad stories that we don't talk a lot about, but that's what happened.
I'm not sure whether that was a yes or a no or a not answering.
I do support our with economic development money, I do support paying $14 an hour wages. I think that's what we ought to be doing with our money.
Okay, thank you. That's a yes then. Vincent Tracy.
When I first retired from the military, I couldn't find a single paying job. I ended up driving school bus, working as a bus mechanic, and at night being a corrections officer for Potawatomi County. I had about 2.5 hours in between jobs where I could catnap. So I understand the difficulty we have with trying to live in Manhattan. I've said it publicly. I don't believe that people in this town should have to work multiple jobs so that they can make the decision, do I pay my utilities this pay period, or do I buy food to support my family? I would support having businesses come in that could afford to have the higher wages. But if they're going to pay $12 an hour, but provide you with the benefits so that you're not paying for it out of your income, I would also support that business. Otherwise, it's up to the chamber to bring in businesses that will make it affordable for our people who work here.
So that was a partial yes. Sarah Siders.
Sarah, I am thankful for you sharing that story, and you know, that's you know, that just shows that we don't have the policy quite figured out. We don't have everything worked out in terms of how to invite companies into our community and then hold them accountable for the agreements that they make for the jobs that they say they'll provide and the wages that they say that they will provide for people. And so I think that's really important. There was a couple things that Caleb said that I agree with, that we need to make sure that we are making room for small businesses. I think a lot of our ED funds go towards larger businesses, and I'd like to see us make room for small business, and we need to figure out what that looks like as far as wages go. And I also want to make sure that we weren't decreasing the amount of jobs that were available by you know, raising wages too much. I know that sounds weird, because in every way I support the idea of this. I just want to figure out exactly like what is a living wage for our community. According to the MIT living wage calculator, it's somewhere around $13.50. So I know that's just maybe like splitting hairs, but I do want to like have a thoughtful discussion about what this looks like. So if that means I'm a no, that means I'm a no, but I do believe in living wage, and I want to know what that looks like for our community.
Thank you. Mary Renee, sure.
Yes, and it will mean less jobs, because she won't need 3 jobs, she'll only need 1. That's how the math works, right? Yes, and I also want to look at, is the city paying that amount to its employees? Is the school district paying that amount to their employees? Are the people here getting that right now? Because they're not. I also want to look at, what if you can't or don't want to work 40 hours, but you still want to get benefits or sick time? Because let's face it, that's what matters. Being able to be off when your kid is sick, being able to take time for yourself, being able to go to the doctor. It's about the job and the quality of the job and how much you hate or love the job, and about $14.25 an hour. So yes, I want to look at that, but immediately I want to look inward, and what are we doing in our own systems, and where do we find that money? But we're going to get better quality people, and you're going to be a better employee at 1 job for that much money than you are at those 3 jobs, and I know you're a fabulous person who busts your butt. But I also know we have turnovers at child care centers because we pay people $7.25 an hour and then wonder why we can't keep them. And at business owners who aren't smart enough to realize you pay them $14.25, they won't turn over, you won't be training them every single week. You get better child care, you get better employees, you get better citizens, you get better people with better paying jobs that also respect you as a person and see that you are not just a job, but also all these other things.
So keep in mind, I'm the Business and Community Liaison at Flint Hills Job Corps, and an important part of my job is to look at current labor market trends and what jobs are needed the most across the state, specifically in our region. So to answer your question about 1425, I would say no, but don't write that down yet, because I think it should be $15 to $18. When I look at labor market reports for the trades, we're training our students in at Job Corps through with the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It's those graduates should be making $15 to $28, depending on the locality in those high demand professions in Kansas. I think our economic development needs to be empowering local talent. The economic development, job creation success stories in Manhattan are often homegrown. Think about GTM, think about Civic Plus, think about the backbone of our community. Manhattan is not a stepping stone to a better place, it is the better place. The core of our attractiveness to the outside is based on the capacity we already have on the inside. We need to reach our potential with the tools and talent we have today.
Thank you. Maureen Sheehan.
Yes, economic development funds must be tied to every job that is brought in is a good paying, long-term job with benefits, with health care, with leave. We should not be giving money to any business that brings in a job, even one job, that is going to put people needing public assistance. needing to work a second or a third job. If we are giving money to a business to come here, or any kind of benefit for a business to come here, they have to bring in every job, and it has to be a good paying job. If we give some money, small amounts of money to a local business to upgrade their facility, maybe that's not tied to every person there has to be a living wage job. I'm not sure how that would work. But yes, we can't give tax dollars to people and then have them pay people a less than living wage.
Our next speaker is Kyle Green with Northview Rising.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Can everybody hear me? My name is Kyle Green, and I've been a Northview resident for 32 years. I'm with Northview Rising, a community organization in Northview with 150 members, all whom are registered voters. 2 years ago, our street, Strong Avenue, was selected to be patched and repaired. For some reason, my front yard was selected to be the focal point for the contractor to conduct their business. This is where they kept their materials they needed in the meeting place each morning before they started the project. As a result, my front yard was damaged. I talked to the contractor and asked if my yard could be repaired or if I could be compensated for the damage. He said no, and I have to talk to the city. In the meantime, another construction project was done involving a drainage system right next to my front yard, and more damage occurred. I reported this damage to City Online. I asked for a bag of grass to help repair the lawn damage. I got a response from the city engineer who said he would look into it. I inquired again and still never heard anything back. I asked for something simple. I will say I was unhappy with the city of Manhattan and wondered if they really cared for the residents. My experience isn't uncommon. Over the years, Northview has had this kind of marginal relationship with the city. Infrastructures have gone unnoticed and unrepaired. Northview continues to lack safe, affordable housing for its residents. The neighborhood is a food desert, and nothing has been done to change that. When projects were done in the past, no one in the neighborhood knew about them until they started. My street experience is a prime example of that. In all of that, the neighborhood feels our interests are consistently unheard and unrepresented. For these reasons, I and my fellow residents want to propose to city council candidates to adopt a concept called participatory budget. Participatory budgeting will enable community members to determine what our most pressing needs are and design programs and policies to address them. It allows the community or the neighborhood more involvement in what happens in the neighborhood. We are capable of determining our wants and needs and finding solutions for them. Just like each one of you, I know circumstances of my life very intimately, and I know what's in my best interest. The same holds true for the people of Northview. We are experts in our own experience. That all being said, will you support participatory budgeting? Will you commit to implementing it in an equitable manner? And will you introduce the concept in a work session within 100 days in office? Thank you.
Our first candidate response comes from Linda Morse.
Thank you. I live in Northview too. I have gone to several of the Northview Rising, but I can't go to all of them. 45 years is a long time. I submitted for 10 years, I submitted a capital improvement program request to get a sidewalk along Knox Lane out to the Northeast Park. And I mean, it has been slow. I've not experienced what Kyle has, and I hope never to. I don't know some of the other Northview people here, but I think it would be worth convening some Northview people to talk specifically with some of the city administration. Specifically, and especially instead of letting time go by 5 years, participatory budgeting. I don't quite understand it all yet. I've been reading your materials, I've been looking at your videos. It doesn't quite come together. It really depends on how much money you want and you think you should have. If it's $10,000, heck, that's doable. If it's $500,000, that's another whole story. Paving the streets in Knoxbury cost $1 million. Paving the streets up on Blue Hills cost $1 million. Is a neighborhood group going to be willing to look at the greater good, buying something for the greater good is my question.
Yeah, I'm gonna say didn't quite, yeah, okay, maybe.
I would be interested in convening a work session. I think that we need to more fully explore what is done for the whole commission and the city administration.
Okay, so that's a yes to a work session. Vincent Tracy.
Full disclosure, I live in Northview. They're still working on replacing the streets in my neighborhood. They started a year ago. They're only halfway done. But we have to look at the whole city and not just one neighborhood. So I'm not gonna say don't support Northview Rising. We have to look at, can we put these neighborhoods, have projects brought to the city, sit down, prioritize what those projects are, then find the money for the ones that are the highest priority. We can't fund everything. We have to be able to look at, hey, you guys that live up in Grandmere, you pay taxes, we're gonna use some of your taxes to take care of a project like, oh gee, something really weird. How about the rec center that was promised on 10th and Yuma? Southpo needs things just as much as anybody else in this city. So I would support doing it. We just need to come up with the proper way of doing it so that it's equitable across the city.
Thank you. Sarah Siders.
Kyle, I'm sorry about your lawn. I mean, gosh, we all know, especially in those older neighborhoods, how hard it is to get a lawn to work. My husband's always seeding the dang thing, so I am very sorry about that. And actually, was at a city commission meeting where somebody came and said, my lawn got tore up, and we had a whole big hearing about it. So I would say, as a concerned citizen, you're welcome to show up at the city commission meeting and say what's going on. But as far as participatory budgeting, I did some research on this, and I think that I love the effect of engaging citizens and improving the representation of marginalized people. I think that's extremely important. And in a democratic society, we need engagement, otherwise it falls apart. So when this was first introduced in Brazil, that's where this idea came from the research that I did. There was a really unique set of, like, an environment there. They had sufficient resources for investment, an ineffective legislature, an active civil society, and a left-leaning party in power. And what they said was, if you don't have these environments in place, that sometimes these different parties can come in and make it hard that they'll minimize the amount of money that's available for participatory budgeting, or they'll end up neutralizing the power of the people. So I would want to make sure that we have buy-in from all the groups at the city commission before I said, or not before I said yes, but before we actually did it. I would hate for it to be ineffective if we tried it.
So is that a yes on a work session?
Yeah.
Mary Renee Shirk.
Yes, yes, please, yes. There's a great YouTube video. I wish I could just play it instead of saying what I'm going to say, because it explains participatory budgeting. It's done in New York, it's done in Chicago, it's done a couple places across the country, so it is done here. It's not about how much money you should have, it's all your money. So participatory budgeting is about spending the money you're paying in. It's about spending smarter. I've lived in 9 different neighborhoods in the time I've lived in this city, and every neighborhood has a different challenge. And as a city commissioner, I can't pretend to know what's important in every single neighborhood, and that's where participatory budgeting comes in. It's also, the video says it actually sounds boring, it's really exciting, and I hate to seem really excited about something so weird, but it's so great because it gets people involved. You decide what's important in your neighborhood, you spend your tax dollars, and you get to do it in an active way with the people around you instead of just once every 2 years when you vote. It's really important. We are going to have less money in the future, and we've got to spend it smarter. And who better to decide how to spend it than people who live in those neighborhoods? So yes, yes, and even if not elected, I'm still going to push for that in this community because it's important for our future, and it's a better way to look at government.
Aaron Estabrook.
All right, so yes, I'm a very big fan of this concept. I worked for 3 years as the executive director of the 501c4 called Save Kansas, and my job was in part to help empower citizens to purge the state of elected officials who were not responsive, who didn't care about your yard, that didn't care about their constituents, and legislators who were seemingly didn't understand how budgets worked, and worse, didn't care to learn. So participatory budgeting is such an innovative way to get buy-in on the projects in our neighborhoods, and more importantly, build community and accountability long after the votes are cast and the project's completed. There are numerous ways to structure this, like Marianne mentioned, or Mary Renee, sorry, mentioned Chicago's done this. Big cities have done this. There is not, Manhattan certainly can do this. What I want to see happen is that we include our youth. Empowering our 14, 15-year-old, our teenagers, I'll get my daughter engaged. I think that's how we get people and get our state and our country and our city back on track, by helping them understand what it looks like to budget, what it looks like, what goes into having a dialogue, and will have lasting impact long after the projects are completed, long after the votes are cast. We'll have buy-in in our neighborhoods.
The hand comes to collect the microphone when the end card comes up. All right, Maureen Sheehan.
Yes, I would absolutely support work sessions, plural, on participatory budgeting. Buy-in from the community is essential. The more people that we can get participating in our government, the better off we will all be. I did see a red flag when I mentioned participatory budgeting with regard to the Bike Walk MHK ask. I would say that PB is not an either-or thing. It needs to be many of the things, everything that goes into our neighborhoods. We need to look at it with as many eyes as possible. Anytime you have a very small group of people trying to make decisions for a large group of people, they can't possibly know the details. They can't possibly know what's critical and important in your neighborhood and my neighborhood and around the city. So yes, we need to, if this is a way to get more people participating in government, I'm absolutely for it.
Thank you. Caleb James.
So short answer again, yes, absolutely, 100%. The Northview Rising Group, near and dear to my heart. I don't live in Northview, I also don't miss the meetings. Participatory budgeting, for those of you who don't know, is basically the city commission or city, whatever the local government is, setting aside a portion of money every year to say, this neighborhood gets to decide how to use this portion of money. And I mean, it's one hell of a day when your government tells you what they're gonna do with your money, like you have no say. And so what I think this program does, not only is it effective, it gets people involved. When people get involved in these programs, they start thinking, what is the government doing with the money? If we can do this with $10,000, why isn't all of that done? And so they start to vote, and I think it helps in multiple facets. It gets people out to vote, gets people involved in their community, it lets people understand that their voices are heard. And it's a small price to pay. I think collectively we have to understand this isn't just Northview asking for it for Northview, this is Northview asking for it for the city. So it's inclusive of everyone. It's not just one area. And so when we're talking about equity and we're talking about equality, here are some ways, how many countless people have went and said, I need this from the commission, or they went and said, I need this from the government, and they never heard anything back. Here's a way for them to be effective with the money that they pay in taxes. So, yes.
Thank you. Our next speaker is from Renters Together, Hope Benoche.
Can you hear me? Hey. Good evening, candidates. I am Hope Benoche, mother, grandmother, and resident of Manhattan, Kansas, representing Renters Together MHK, asking for support for the rental inspection program. Renters also make up 60% of our community. Our membership is 150 people strong and growing, 100 registered voter signatures on petitions supporting the rental inspection program. We will continue to educate and register voters up until this election. I ask for your support for the rental inspection program so no other family would have to experience what we have renting in Manhattan. My youngest daughter, 3 cats, 1 dog, and I have been displaced and homeless due to subpar housing. My daughter has been diagnosed with asthma and epilepsy. Until we moved to Manhattan, she had been 13 months seizure-free. She then started having seizures about once a week and having difficulty breathing. There was mold in her bedroom closet from a water leak from the subpar plumbing in the house. I contacted the property management company with no response. I contacted the City of Manhattan City Code Services. 8 code violations were noted, and we were displaced. We were told that for only 2 weeks by the property management company. 1 month later, we were homeless. Repairs had not even been started, and our belongings were still in the house, being contaminated by mold spores. Fortunately, my children's father did not seek legal action. Unfortunately, not everything can be decontaminated, only discarded. Stuffed animals from mine and my children's first Christmases, handprints made in plaster, and numerous other keepsakes of my children's childhood, gone forever. Imagine escaping an unsafe home, only to be moving to another one, then being ill, displaced, and homeless. No words can explain the feeling of disappointment, failure of caring for your children, and loss. The rental inspection program would help to notify property owners of potential problems before they are problems. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. My ask is for your support for the rental inspection program. My family and I trust our commissioners to ensure and enforce safe housing. Our Manhattan community depends upon you, our commissioners, to keep us safe in our homes and community. Thank you. Hope.
Our first candidate response comes from Vincent Tracy.
Okay, everybody grab your red card. You're not gonna like my answer. I don't believe that mandatory rental inspections are feasible in the city of Manhattan because of the number of people that would have to be hired, their salaries, the people to support them that would have to be hired, the vehicles that would have to be purchased, the office space, the office equipment that would have to be found. That doesn't say I don't support inspections. When a property is first being brought on the market to be rented, it needs to be inspected before it's occupied. Anytime one of the rental properties has renovations done to it, if it's done between renters, it needs to be inspected. A schedule needs to be set up so that these inspections can be done on a regular basis that doesn't overload the code services. Right now, they're short 1 code service inspector. They can't even do all of the jobs that they're supposed to do. So, red cards, if you please.
Thank you. That was a no. Sarah Siders.
We inspect our water, our air, and our food establishments. And I think that water, food, and air are part of the water, food, and air and shelter, basic human needs, Maslow's hierarchy. So I think that it makes sense that if we're going to, like, I don't want to call code services because there's a cockroach in my food, right? Somebody needs to be making sure that, like, where I eat is healthy, that my water doesn't have lead in it, and that my home is safe. I think that's fair. Yes, I believe that it needs to be cost neutral to the city. And I have talked with people, like John, about this program in depth. And I've talked with property owners, I've talked with tenants, I've talked with just people about this, because I wanted to know, like, what's the vibe and is this actually doable? And as one of the property owners I spoke with, he said the tide is turning. And I think we're really seeing that people are going to be able to get on board with this. So for me, I like to get, I like to find that common ground. I like to find where we can get a win for as many people as possible, for the city, for the property owners who are investing and have a business here in our community. They're committed to our city, and I think we need to reward them as business owners, but we also need to take care of our vulnerable people and provide safe places for them to live.
Thank you. Mary Renee Shirk.
Yes. If you operate a business in this city, like she said, we inspect you. Restaurant, we inspect you. Childcare, we inspect you. If you operate a business where you happen to be a landlord, I think we should inspect you. This seems like a reasonable thing to do. Asthma sucks, and mold is everywhere, and it's hard. We've got a lot of folks with it. I've had friends who had rental units like that. We lived in a rental unit like that, and it was horrible and avoidable, and they knew it was there. And that's one of those things that consistent, regular rental inspections mean that we're going to catch those things. And it's better investment for the property owner. Also, rental inspections ensures continuation of property values in some of our neighborhoods where we have rental units with irresponsible landlords. Amen, right? I want to make sure that we also, on the other side, continue to educate renters. I talked to Landlords Association. She said one of the problems is people don't read it anymore because they get it electronically and we all just click I accept. And so understanding your lease and understanding your legal rights are very important, so both sides of those. We find the money to fund our police department. We find the money to fund our police and our fire. It's important to find the money to protect people in their own homes. At the top, I have it right here, top violation, electrical equipment. Why am I paying for a fire department when one of the biggest risks is that rental units have electrical equipment that's going to catch fire?
Thank you.
So after I served in the military, I transitioned out and moved back to Manhattan, moved my family back to Manhattan so I could work in a job that allowed me to be a case manager for homeless veterans across northern Kansas. I travel I-70 and I help secure housing for over 300 veterans over a 3-year period, 200 veterans families. I carried with me the Kansas Landlord and Tenant Act. I utilized HUD-VASH in Section 8, and so I became familiar about these obstacles that we face. But I built relationships with landlords, with Westar, with the utilities, with Kansas Gas, and I've always and will always be a champion for housing first models. The hierarchy of needs comes into play. I know what it's like to do whatever it takes to get a roof over your head. And I know what it feels like to have that pressure come off of your shoulders. But over time, we all start to identify more needs, and perhaps we notice things that need to be fixed in the home that we didn't notice when we were just grateful to have a roof. So I believe we need to empower people to utilize code services as you did, but I don't like that you were homeless because of that. We need to fix that, absolutely. We need to build those relationships and put bad landlords out of business by enforcing the codes that we have. By enforcing the codes that exist currently.
Is it? Okay, not mandatory. All right, Maureen Sheehan.
Doing the community
I hope,
assessment.
I haven't been to a meeting in a little while, been a little busy, but it's good to see you. Yes, I definitely support rental inspections. It depends on what the program looks like, of course. There is a way to do it, and there's a way to do it right, so that we ensure that people have safe housing. Individuals can't be expected to do a 5-minute walkthrough of an apartment and know whether or not it's safe, whether or not it's got mold in the closet, whether or not the plumbing is properly done. No individual, well, no, most individuals, especially kids, don't have the expertise and the knowledge to walk through an apartment or a house and recognize what the problems might be. So yes, I think that as with any business, we inspect restaurants, we inspect gas stations, we inspect dog kennels, we inspect businesses, and we expect for businesses to provide quality product. Rental property is a business, and we need to ensure that rental properties are quality products.
Thank you. Cameron James.
Awesome. So, 100% mandatory rental inspection. Short answer, no. A little bit longer answer. The thing is, we want safe and affordable housing. Businesses get inspected, businesses pay to be inspected. So if you want housing to be affordable, here's what's gonna happen. Mandatory rental inspections, the city's gonna raise the property taxes to pay for that. We've seen them do it the last 6 years in a row without even having that inspection program in there. They're gonna find a way to raise the taxes. Now those raised taxes are gonna be passed on to the renters. Why? Because the landlords are running a business and the business can't take a loss. So you're gonna see the rent go up. And now, I've done the research, I'm a senior business analyst. I sit down and run numbers and do calculations day after day after day. And I've been looking at this for years, and there's no place where an effective program has went in where the average rent has not come up. Now, some people cite Lawrence as an example, but Lawrence isn't an example of 100%. And in Lawrence, they get to choose which one of their rentals get inspected. So, how is that effective? In order to be effective, I have to inspect every unit every year. We have a program right now where you can call, and I believe college students are capable of calling. So I support an addendum, mandatory on every lease, that says here's code services number, here are the main violations we see around here, and that says there's no retaliation possible from your landlord for calling us.
Okay, that was a no. And Linda Morse.
The answer is yes, I support rental inspections. I supported rental inspections when I first ran for office 4.5 years ago. Once elected, there were not 3 votes on the city commission. So I encourage you to watch who you elect if this is an important issue for you. Because I got there with all the hope in the world and died because we couldn't pass it. We settled for rental registration. In the last census, there were showed 60% of Manhattan living units were rental. I believe we're up to 70% by now, and it'll take this next census to prove that. But the landlords here have had their way for a long time with minimal rules, and it's hard to rein in someone or some business owner, I suppose. I look at all the other businesses that are regulated, and you've mentioned a lot of them today. If it's a barber shop, if it's a child care, restaurant, all of those businesses require inspection. Why not? I don't expect the city to carry this burden totally. I expect there to be a rotation system of some kind, like once every 5 years, so we can actually improve the quality of the housing that we have here.
Thank you. Our next speaker is from Safe and Affordable Housing Action, Brenda Mayberry.
Hello, my name is Brenda Mayberry. I am a voter and a member of this community for over 25 years. I'm also a member of Safe and Affordable Housing Action in Manhattan, a local grassroots group of active citizens who are concerned about housing in Manhattan. I come with many questions and seeking answers to those questions. First, your own city study, American Community Survey of 2014 to 2019, stated that 61% of the housing units in Manhattan are rental properties. I am a living example of that statistic. Second, the lack of affordable housing is the top concern of Manhattan residents, according to the city's community survey. I attended many community town hall type meetings concerning the health of this community, sponsored by the Kansas Health Foundation. Through one of those meetings, I was selected to participate in study circles to focus on the issue of housing. Those that attended those study circles came from highly diverse backgrounds from this community. After many hours, we came to a consensus on 3 topics of major interest or concerns for renters, landlords, and homeowners. Those 3 items were rental inspections, neighborhood revitalization, and housing trust fund. Most importantly, we felt we had a voice and were eager to share with the City Commission. Imagine our surprise when we thought we should share our hard work for results to a housing advisory board, only to find there is no such thing for Manhattan. A housing advisory board is needed to provide an ongoing voice for people like me who don't have the time to be at every City Commission meeting. Upon further research, we found that Wichita, Topeka, Hayes, Lawrence, and even a smaller town than Manhattan, Atchison, Kansas, have all housing advisory boards. So I stand before you as a member of Safe and Affordable Housing Action of Manhattan and ask, why does Manhattan not have a housing advisory board? And will you commit to establishing a housing advisory board in your first 100 days in office as a city commissioner? Thank you for your time.
Our first respondent is Sarah Siders.
Thank you for sharing your story there. I know that housing is an issue here in our city, and it's actually an issue across the nation, and some people will come from other places around the country and move to Manhattan and say, you guys don't have an affordable housing issue, it's much cheaper to live here. And so what I've noticed, because I've been in these conversations quite a bit over the last year, is that it's relative to where you live and your expectations, but it's also relative to how much money you make. There's so many pictures, or so many pieces to the picture with affordable housing, because it's like, again, wages, access to food, transportation, healthcare, and so I tend to take a more holistic look when I'm thinking about housing. I would want to know specifically just the functions of the advisory board. It sounds like this is a service that is a program that's working in other cities, and it makes sense to me. But I don't want to just come on board and say yes because that's the right thing to say for the room. I want to know more about what the goals and functions of the Housing Advisory Board would be before I would give an absolute yes, but I can imagine that once I learned, I would say yes.
Okay, so that's a not quite answer. Yeah. Mary Renee Scher.
Hi, Brenda. Hi. Yes. And now I feel like I'm saying yes to everything, but a lot of you know me. I've lived in this town a long time, and I'm just so excited to be in a public forum and say yes to all of these things of making Manhattan a better place. I'm really excited about the concept of a trust fund. They're doing this a couple different places. There's some really exciting things happening in housing and how to make housing more affordable. It is part of a bigger picture. If you've seen any forums, you hear me talk about making Manhattan more affordable. Not having to have a car makes the city more affordable. Not having a better wage makes the city more affordable. $900 a month doesn't seem like crazy rent if the place is safe, and if you only have to have one job, and if you don't have to have a car. So it is a bigger picture. I say yes because then we have meetings and talk about what specifically that board does in this city, what specifically programs we're looking at. So we have to say yes, just explore it, to be able to see what power we're talking about and see what fits us as a city. I think we also need to stop this thing we do in town. We're like, oh, Lawrence is doing it, so we can't do it. And I see that in a lot of places. Not if you've seen that. When you try to bring up something from somewhere else, like, no, we can't do that. Yes, we can. We're not that special. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. Other places have great things, and we can steal it from them. So, yes.
I think there's about 280 some variations of community land trust, so we don't have to copy Lawrence's, we can pick something up. But to answer your question about the appointment of Affordable Housing Advisory Board, I, as your commissioner, would like to appoint Brenda to this advisory board. But I really do want to make sure that all stakeholders, including our developers, our landlords, our tenants, especially our tenants, and the several other representatives, including K-State and Manhattan Area Technical College, some of the workforce employment areas, need to be on that advisory board. And so I've been working with a group to bring together that workforce housing trust fund, and I want to make sure that we make Manhattan stronger by recognizing that with student enrollment declining and the home rental vacancies increasing, we have an opportunity to repurpose these older single-family homes that have been carved up, as you know, like into 6 bedrooms and partied in for 40 years. They need some love, and to repurpose them into our workforce housing. So that is a very, very passionate subject of mine. I think we're in the right place at the right time. We need the right commission to make it happen, to revitalize our community. I would be a strong advocate pushing that along on the commission, and would be happy to be part of the advisory board.
Thank you. Maureen Sheehan. Hi, Brenda.
Yeah, I think a housing advisory board sounds like a great idea. Exactly what it would look like would be something that would need to be hammered out in work sessions, and hopefully we would have a lot of people there that could suggest what the complexion of what the makeup of the board would be. We need to have landlords on it, and as well as tenants, students, elderly. We need a cross-section of people on such a board. So it's not going to be something that we can just say, sure, let's set up a board, I name you, and boom, it's done. It's going to take some work. Housing trust, very important. I would definitely want to work on that. I don't know quite how it works and where the money comes from, but I think it would be really important. Revitalization I worry about. I live on the south side of town in SoPo. My concern when people say revitalization is that they would want to go in and gentrify and raise the rates, the prices to where the elderly, the on fixed incomes, can't live there anymore. A young family can't afford to buy into my neighborhood where it's a great place that I can walk to Aggieville, I can walk downtown, I can walk to the library, I can walk to City Park. So, yes.
Thank you. Caleb James.
Thank you. As always, short answer first. Yes, absolutely, I'm for it. We were given these questions a little over a week ago, so you'll get a yes or a no from me on everything today. I went ahead and researched it all. It makes absolutely no sense not to have one. My family specifically, when the floods hit last September, we lost both vehicles and everything we owned. And so as if that wasn't enough of a headache, now I gotta find a place for us to live. So when we're talking about affordability, insurance kicks in, but it doesn't kick in immediately. So where can I afford to come out of pocket, put a deposit down, and then turn around and pay the first month's rent, and then make sure all the connections get made, the water is on, the lights are on. You need a place that's affordable. Not only affordable for high income earners, but affordable for the average citizen who's making $30,000 to $40,000 a year. So to that point, absolutely, I'm 100% for appointing people to the board that will sit down and strategically look at how can we make Manhattan affordable for everyone.
Thank you. Linda Morris.
If I start talking about flooding, I'll be 5 minutes. So I'm going to stick to the Housing Advisory Board. And I think we need one. I have some concerns about the Unified Development Ordinance that's coming up. It's going to be released soon. It's going to hit us pretty quick, and it's going to be thick. and it's gonna bring lots of policy changes. It is an effort to consolidate the zoning ordinances and the subdivision regulations, because they have been separate. But we don't know what's in them yet. But within 2 months, we're gonna be passing something like that. So I want the opportunity for our community to talk about what's contained in those. I've asked the city manager for a meeting for the Northview community, Kyle, because I think the Northview community needs to talk about the housing quality in the context of the flood threat there. That's really serious. Just because I didn't get flooded last time doesn't mean I won't be this next time. So I have a underlying fear every time the water hits the top of those gates out there. But anyway, housing advisory board just seems logical. I don't know why we don't have one. We need one, and let's push it to get it.
Thank you. Vincent Tracy.
Okay, fair warning, grab the red cards. Yes, I support having a board to handle affordable housing action. But what's the board makeup gonna be? What's the board's responsibility going to be? And what legal rights do they have to make things happen? You also have to remember, you're asking, can we do this within the first 100 days? It takes 3 sitting commissioners to get the city to move forward on anything. Just having 1 or 2 say yes is not gonna get it done. There's a need for it, we can work for it, but we can't guarantee it's gonna happen.
So that sounded like a yes with an asterisk. Okay. I believe we're to our final speaker. From the Environmental Coalition, Annie Lomchek.
Hi all, testing. My name is Annie Lomchek. I'm a 3rd-year architecture student and an active member of this community. Today I'm representing the Manhattan Eco Alliance. A large part of how my perspective as an adult has been shaped comes down to my upbringing with my dad. A firm believer in the golden rule, treat others how you would want to be treated, my dad took a similar attitude with the environment. He was a constant good force of doing good for it. By age 10, I was recycling avidly at home and at school. I remember to this day the after-school club that I helped start that sought to make an environmental impact in our school. We recycled in the cafeteria and classrooms, introduced our classmates and teachers to composting, and what do you know, our efforts paid off. In 2008, Tomahawk Elementary in the Shawnee Mission District reduced waste produced in the school by 92%. Yes. Around that same age, I remember constructing our own family compost pile at home. My dad and I made a Lincoln log structure to hold everything in the corner of our backyard. I remember sitting in our kitchen, shoveling out coffee grounds from stupid Keurig cups that I refused to let my mom throw in the trash. I probably hauled out hundreds of filters and grounds, slipping them into the compost bin and throwing the rest of the cup into recycling. I wasn't too keen on having chores, but this was one I thought was too important not to do. At that age, I believed climate change could be stopped. I thought that those small steps could be an integral part of the solution. What I didn't know then was that climate crisis, was a force 100 years of the making, and one that would necessitate big, dynamic, and comprehensive action. As I remember these important parts of my upbringing, I'm affirmed by the importance of small personal acts. Even though composting seemed a hell of a lot harder than tossing a Keurig pod into the trash can, it eventually became a habit. I know that if everyone could be diligent and conscious of their daily habits and lifestyles, we could make important changes on the road to staving off the climate crisis. But I wonder, would it be enough? I was happy to see my dad continue initiating changes, like in his restaurant, we got rid of styrofoam takeout containers, switched to biodegradable straws, and replaced plastic bags with paper. We put solar panels on our home and got electric cars to increase our renewable energy footprint. These small things make a difference, but they are a drop in the bucket when we think about the power and opportunity municipal governments and major corporations have to enact systemic change. Not only does making the environment and climate crisis a priority set a tone as a community value, there's simply just a larger impact.
A lot of what brought me to architecture here at K-State was the motivation to be a global citizen. I decided I wanted to be a decision maker. I want to say in community and building design that'll shape spaces and adapt for future generations. I will soon be LEED certified and better able to prioritize impacts within a complex network of systems, something that's much greater than myself. I see that global scale matters, not just as a student, but as a citizen, and that's why I'm here today. We need bold action. We need the environment and climate crisis to be everyone's priority, just like it was for kids in my elementary school, in my dad's restaurant, in my home, and how we need it to be for the City Commission in Manhattan, Kansas. I'm a registered voter in Riley County, and I am one voice of many who demand that we take responsibility and act swiftly as a community. We'll be gathering signatures and currently have 200 resident voters who support our coalition act this evening, which is, in closing, will you support the formation of an equitably derived, community-driven climate resiliency advisory board tasked with the development and implementation of a comprehensive climate action plan within 18 months of office, and will you invest in the goal of reducing carbon emissions by at least 30% by 2030? Thank you.
What a question to end on. Mary Renation.
Thank you for that. I have a daughter who's just like you. She curses me when I don't recycle. She is that sort of vision, because I'm not very old, but I'm old enough that we didn't do that. Which leads me into my answer, which is yes. And it starts with changing the conversation. It starts with things like recycling bins in the park. It starts with having this conversation, with having this goal, which is also a dream, because I read this question and I was like, wow, is she kidding? And she's not, because she knows that we're not joking about this. This is serious. We take action now. Many of the things that I support and want to put forward as city commissioner are about reducing our footprint. Less cars, number one. The problem with some of this is I can't control what the school district does with the school buses, or what the county does. So it faces me with the problem of the limitations of a city commissioner, a single one, or even 3, or even 5. So yes, and I want to forward that conversation, and I think we need to look again within what we're already doing and make the small steps that let people know we can actually affect change. And once they see that small step actually do something and get in the habit of recycling, then the next step, which seems scarier, isn't quite as scary anymore. So I do think we need to do this. I do think it's a very optimistic thing, and I think some older folks in this community, and I hate to make that sound like that, are going to be resistant to it, but it's something we need to do.
All right, full disclosure before I forget, I'm colorblind, so I'm red-green colorblind too. So I'll ask for advice later after the presentation. But on this, this is such a refreshing to hear that bold demand, to hear that voice that you're lifting up, and I am so proud of you, and I think it inspires. Hopefully, my daughter, you can talk to her about those Keurig coffee scooping in our closet, in our home. There was a period of time where every time you open the pantry, cardboard would fall out from every container that you could imagine, and she wouldn't let us get rid of it because she was using it for all the crafts and everything, and then we recycled it. But I just remember and reflect back to when I was in 2nd and 3rd grade, selling t-shirts. Fern Goalie was cool then, I don't know if anyone remembers, but selling t-shirts to save the rainforest, and that is what's missing when you look at this question, is the passion and the need, and it goes back to Jess talking about our 5th grade son in the Capitol saying they let people in here. Well, this is our environment, this is our home, and that's the eyes that we see when we're little. This is where we're going to be. So I would support it as quickly as we can.
Thank you. Maureen Sheehan.
Bold vision. And we're going to need bold steps. So yes, I support it. I don't know how to make it work, but I definitely support it. I have a lot of ideas, such as getting the AdaBus to be using zero emissions vehicles instead of gas powered vehicles. Green roofs. As much as the city can do, I would press for that to be done. My daughters recycle. My son-in-law is no longer allowed to use the Keurig. He's back to filtered coffee. Because my daughter actually hurt her wrist opening all of his Keurig cups. She said, no, I'm not doing it anymore. You're gonna just have to brew your own cup of coffee. So yeah, recycling is big. It's not only young people, it's old people too. A friend of mine said he went to the recycling place and everybody there was a man 50 years old or older. So it's not just the young people and it's not just the women, it's everybody. We're all concerned and we need to do everything that we can.
Thank you. Caleb James.
All right, so short answer, I'm not sure. I support your division and your vision, your direction. That's a different question that you asked today. I try to listen to anytime anybody's talking to me. The question you asked today is different than the one we got in the email. So with the 30% reduction, that's not in the email. So I wouldn't know what it took as far as manpower and execution in order to do the 30% reduction.
That's a very low ball.
Yeah, I just want to be full disclosure because I try to do my research anytime somebody brings something to me and it's a request. I take it very seriously. So I researched what you asked for in your initial ask. So the question you're asking today, I'm not sure, simply because I haven't done the research and looking at the city budget and what it would take to invest in those efficiencies and over what time span that would take. So that would be the only reason why I couldn't fully commit today, is because I haven't had the opportunity to do the research. Absolutely support your vision, absolutely support the direction that you're leaning in, and I want to make sure that the city is efficient wherever possible, because efficiencies equal savings.
Thank you. I think that's a middle one.
I think this is a worthy goal. I've watched our community going from what I thought was a recycling community to our local collection point doesn't even pay, I don't think, for cans anymore, do they? They pay for cans, but only cans.
All scrap prices are way off.
Yeah.
That's what I do, so.
I just know that the emphasis is totally off of recycling, not at a peak like it used to be. And in other states, they still have those goats in the front of the grocery store, so you take your cans in and put them in. The emphasis is off here as far as the feeling I have. I think anytime we can improve our environment, we should. And there are simple steps, and right now we aren't even taking those. And so I would support some way to move forward. But, you know, I think we also need some leadership here too, whether it's another advisory board, I don't know. But I think we have to try, and whatever that means. Maybe it's a group of some of you who come together and make a proposal to do something about it, rather than just kicking it on down the way. I would support a reasonable effort. I can't support something that's gonna cost the city a lot, but I can support the effort. Advisory, I mentioned that.
Okay, so I was hearing a yes on advisory board, but kind of in between there on some of the other, yeah. Vincent Tracy.
My answer comes with an asterisk. You're asking us to herd cats. The very first thing we have to do is get the other governing bodies together to be interested, so that this is a joint task force, not just the city of Manhattan trying to do it. So I would support a task force, but you're not gonna get it within a year. Look how long it's taken to get some of the projects that are going on right now. All it takes is one of those agencies to say, no, not interested, it ends. But we can keep working on it. That's my answer. We can keep working on it. Whether or not you like that, It's not gonna happen in the time frame we were asked for.
Okay, that sounded like a no, but I want to step out here in front of the candidates to say, thank you for your patience with my hand. Oh, Sarah, Sarah.
I'd like to contribute. It's okay. No, you got to your speech. No, it's good. It's good. Okay. Thank you for sharing your vision, and you're so committed. And we need our younger generation to rise up and say, what the heck, right? What are we doing with our planet? Generation Z cares so much. It is so active and is such a force to be reckoned with. And it's like in every area of life, I'm like, dang, these people are organized. They are not messing around. So they're gonna get what they want. I think that a task force, so here's my yes to that is, yes, we need somebody who knows about the newest technologies, the way that we can, do green design, get, waste reduction, all of that. We need a group of people that, are a cross section of multiple areas of the city to help us make those reductions. So I do agree with that. Of course, I want to know more about the cost and, all of that, like just the logistics of it would be my concern. I want to be thoughtful about this. I want to be thoughtful about logistics. I don't want to just come up here and say yes to all and then we can't do it. That's not cool. So I just want to know logistically, how do we make this work? How do we make it, obviously it's going to reduce costs over time, but it's a long game and we absolutely need to be playing that long game. I think we need to align ourselves with the values of Gen Z in order to make ourselves a safe, affordable, and competitive place, so yes.
So, thank you for your patience with the hand grasping the microphone. I was just doing it because I had to obey Jerry or I would be in trouble. So, I'm gonna hand things over to Jess again.
All right.
To wrap us up.
Yeah, just wow. First of all, this has just been an incredible 95 minutes of participatory democracy. And the People's Forum is simply the first event among many where Manhattan residents will have an opportunity to demonstrate the capacity and power of community involvement, our ability to determine our own interests, and finally, our ability to bring our needs to elected officials. Elected officials hold office at the pleasure of the people. This may not be a known or felt phenomenon in Manhattan. However, the People's Forum Coalition believes a conscious, involved, vocal, and visible political majority in our community has the power to shift how we do business. Our goal is to change the culture here, and pretty much what we can imagine asking for as residents. And only an engaged citizenry can grapple with the question of what works or doesn't work. We have the power to shape the Manhattan landscape on behalf of the many, the residents who make our space an incredible home to work, study, and live. The People's Forum Coalition would like to acknowledge and extend a heartfelt thanks to all those who made tonight possible. If you could raise your hand or stand when you're recognized. We'd like to thank the People's Forum Planning Committee and participating organizations. First, Bike Walk MHK. Folks who are still here. Yeah, you all did this. Foothills Human Rights Project. The Manhattan Alliance for Peace and Justice. The Manhattan Eco Alliance. Northview Rising. Renters Together. And Safe and Affordable Housing Action. I'd also like to thank our MAPJ interns from K-State's Nonprofit Leadership and American Ethnic Studies courses. Our community volunteers. And of course to our city commission candidates. And we appreciate you being here with us. To round out the list of essential partners, we'd also like to extend a thank you to the Staley School of Leadership Studies for providing the space for the People's Forum and their continued effort to build campus community partnerships and spaces for collaboration around community engagement.
Let me show you what I have.
So to end this important evening, we would be remiss if we did not offer our audience members post-forum opportunities to engage. I have on my notes, change slide. There you go. You can do this evening. You can register to vote. You can register others through October 15th. It's quite easy, just psvotes.org. You can also check the status of your voter registration. You can join and become an active member of a local grassroots community organization. There are 7 present at tonight's event, but these are but a small handful of the vibrant organizations working to change Manhattan. You can engage members of your community around issues that matter to you. We will have a post-forum forum, a social event co-hosted by MAPJ and People's Forum Coalition partners to take place at Public Hall October 17th from 7 to 9 p.m. Lastly, we invite you to vote for candidates in the November 3rd election. This concludes our citizen issue framed electoral accountability forum. Democracy and community is something that we make together. If you could leave your feedback for our organizers, we'd greatly appreciate it. It was not noted on the list whether 1 or 5 was high or low, so we're going to say 1 was a poor experience and 5 life-changing. So, thank you so much.
She posted the lecture. She posted the entire lecture.
Oh, like a video?
Yeah.
I asked her for the PowerPoint. What's that?
That's what you get.
Oh.
That's what you get if you ask for